Okay, to be perfectly honest with you guys, this movie is not the next movie on the 1001 movie challenge. It's in the challenge, but it was not the next movie that I'm supposed to review, but I really wanted to watch this movie before Christmas and get this review out there, so I skipped ahead, I cheated a little bit, and I watched Metropolis, and to be honest with you guys, it is so worth it. But before I get into this right now, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share my videos as much as possible so we can finally get this channel growing. And also, ring the bell to get notified every time I come up with a new video, because I'm nearing my third year on being on YouTube. I plan to be on YouTube a whole lot more than I was last year. And also, to point this out, Merry Christmas, everybody. Hopefully, everyone's having a happy holiday. And if you're a really big fan of silent pictures, and you're not sure if your family is, and you want to introduce them to silent pictures, Metropolis is most definitely the movie. So, Metropolis is an absolute masterpiece. It came out in 1927, and throughout all the silent pictures that I have watched during this challenge, it has really definitely been a challenge, especially when it comes to silent pictures, because most of these movies you have heard about in history, so you can kind of have the idea where these movies are going, but some of these movies, it takes like 20 minutes to a half hour to finally get these movies going so you can finally understand exactly what's going on. It's been quite a hassle for most of these movies. But for Metropolis, how fast did this movie get my interest? Literally in the very beginning. Like when the title screen popped up. Because usually when the title of the movie pops up in a silent picture, it's basically a black screen with white words in the center, and they basically have the list of all the actors. The same usual formula that you would have in the very beginning of a movie. This one, it was so stylized. This is the first time I actually saw stylized opening credits. You just see a bunch of lights shooting everywhere, and then lasers go zigzagging, forming the words Metropolis. Now, this is not the same Metropolis as it is in the Superman comic book. No, this is a Metropolis that came out... Actually, it came out 11 years before Superman even existed. This is a futuristic city. Basically, they call it Metropolis. It takes place in the year, I don't know, the year 3000, year 5000. They don't really say a date on what this movie is, but the message behind this movie is so noticeable. One thing that I have to point out is, like I just said, is that usually it takes a while to get into silent pictures because it takes like a couple of minutes for you to understand exactly what's going on because it's a silent picture. If you see two people talking to each other and there's no word crawl, you don't know what they're talking about. For the director of Metropolis, it looked like he understood that, and he thought to himself, let's not explain the story by the dialogue, let's explain the story by the cinematography. Because in the very beginning of this movie, you see all these workers, they have their heads down, they have these weird hats on, they're wearing the same uniform, and they basically stroll in this massive line, and then you see another line coming out of the distance. It's basically where the workers are coming from. They're exchanging shifts. You see the new shift just walking slowly in there, and you see the old shift walking so slowly, but they walk in a unanimous way all the way to these elevators to the city below Metropolis. Basically, there's the upper city and there's the lower city. The upper city, it's a paradise, it's a marvel. It's all the visual effects that are completely amazing. Everything that you would expect to see in a futuristic movie. Whereas the underground city, it's basically ruins, it's where slaves go, but they call them workers in this movie. But you know for a fact by how the upper class treats the workers that these people are definitely slaves. So in other words, this movie shows us that in the future, this is the nightmare of slavery may actually come back, and we have no control over that. It's just the basic minds on what this world is. Because the upper class for most of these people, they don't feel like they're doing anything wrong because this is how they grew up to live like, and this is how the workers grew up to live like. Until one man who is the son of the main leader, I can't say I call his father the mayor, he is more like the company leader that controls the workers down below. His son suddenly meets this woman who is a teacher in the workforce, and he starts to gain an interest in her, and he does something that nobody else has done before. He goes down and checks it out. And this is where the movie definitely picks up. Usually I thought to myself, if we're not in the visual masterpiece that is the upper world, I think the bottom world is just going to be really boring, going to be really basic. No, it was not simply basic. I mean, just the camera movements, the actions of the actors, the cinematography, everything was absolutely captivating. And there was no line of dialogue for most of these shots, but your eyes are just focused because It is insanely creative on how they put these scenes together. And this is not just like a pretend future where you just see white walls all over the place with big boxes with buttons on them. No, they went out of their way to create the design of what these factories, what these buildings, and all of these vehicles look like. Granted, some of the cars in this movie still look like cars that came out in the 1920s. However, when you look at the big visual of the city, you see train lines going everywhere, you see planes flying in and out of the city. It does look like a visual marvel of what the 1920s thought the future was going to look like. And I found that very, very interesting. But another thing I found really interesting in this movie is the AI that this scientist comes up with. You see, the main plot of this story is that the woman that our main character is following always teaches the workers about the Tower of Babel. If you know that story from the Bible. The Tower of Babel was basically the upper class wanting to have a connection with God, to build a really tall tower that can reach heaven, and they would have that connection. But in order to do that, they used slave labor in order to build this tower, and in doing so, God punished them by changing their languages, and the tower was never finished. In Metropolis, the second Tower of Babel has been finished, and it's this marvelous, creative-looking tower that is sitting in the middle of Metropolis, and that's where the higher-ups live. So she talks about one of these men finally coming down and seeing the slave labor that these workforces are going through, and that he will put a stop to it. You get where I'm going right here. This is like literally the first 30 seconds of this movie. There's like 2 hours of this movie, and every single time they come up with a new plot line or just a new character, this movie knows how to grab your interest. Like, for example, this scientist comes up with this an AI robot. The AI robot is iconic. You probably have seen the AI robot whenever you think of Metropolis all of the time. So when the AI finally showed up, I was thinking to myself, okay, what's so interesting about this robot? Turns out, a whole lot. It's probably the very first time that people in movie theaters ever saw an AI on screen. They probably already seen robots, but they're kind of boxy. You can tell that it's a person inside of an outfit, but this one looks like the T-1000 meets I don't know, say the outer parts of the Terminator. That's really what it looks like. Because she moves like an actual human being. She has wires all attached to her, but when they zoom on her face, it does not look real. Her eyes are fake, her mouth is fake, it all looks absolutely fake. But it's hard to really tell the difference at a distance, because she moves like an actual human being, which probably told everyone this connection that this is an AI that is mostly connected to humans. And that is the main plot when it comes to this robot. This scientist wants to change this AI robot into that woman, replace her, and teach the workers to stay in their place. This is where they belong. Just the manipulation of what a corrupt system, a corrupt business, or just even a corrupt government will go through in order to get their way. So Metropolis has so many messages into it, and not only are they all very interesting, the visuals are interesting, the set designs are out of this world, the acting is incredible, and I can guarantee you that this is the best silent picture ever made. That is just an absolute fact. Most people would think it's The General, because The General is one of the funniest comedies in the silent picture era. Some people say it's the movie Wings. I've already reviewed the movie Wings because it was the first movie ever to win Best Picture. But for me, Metropolis is just so captivating. And after watching this movie, the only thing I wanted to do was watch it all over again. That is saying something, especially in the silent picture era. And if you notice if you ever have a chance to watch this movie, there are so many moments in this movie that you would think to yourself, I recognize that. I recognize that because a lot of directors were inspired by this movie. One of them in which was Stanley Kubrick. You could definitely tell that Stanley Kubrick, in his movies, he took a lot of inspiration from this movie. So if you're a huge Stanley Kubrick fan, watch Metropolis. You will not be disappointed. So I will say Metropolis is amazing. It is incredible. I can't think of one bad thing about this movie, and the more I think about it, the more I absolutely enjoy it, and I am thankful that I watched this movie because Metropolis is legendary. Like I said, the best silent picture that I have ever seen, and will be the best silent picture of all time because nobody watches silent pictures anymore. But this is definitely a movie to definitely check out. But guys, if you saw Metropolis, what did you think of it? I am really curious about your opinions on this movie. Comment them down below, and I'll see you in the next video.